Breaking tonight, Republicans and the White House gearing up for what looks like the ugliest political battle in years, as we get new details on the White House's plan to allow some 5 million illegal immigrants to stay in America. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Just last night, we reported right here on the president's plan to ignore Congress and, with the stroke of a pen, allow an unprecedented number of illegal immigrants to stay here, specifically those with children who were born in the United States. It would also expand the break he already gave many children brought here illegally by their parents. Republicans tonight are vowing to fight.
I'll just say this. We're going to fight the president tooth and nail if he continues down this path.
I believe he will make the subject of immigration absolutely toxic for a decade.
Surely the president understands the kind of explosion that would occur up here if he takes that unilateral action.
We're looking at all options. They're on the table. Our goal here is to stop the president from doing this.
Now worries are running high over a constitutional crisis between a lame duck president with little to lose and a Republican majority which thinks this plan goes way too far, effectively suspending deportations for nearly half of all the illegal immigrants living in the United States. A power held by the Congress, not the president, as Mr. Obama himself once admitted.
The notion that I can just suspend deportations through executive order, that's just not the case, because there are laws on the books that Congress has passed. There are enough laws on the books by Congress that are very clear in terms of how we have to enforce our immigration system, that for me to simply, through executive order, ignore those congressional mandates would not conform with my appropriate role as president.
Moments ago, I spoke with Charles Krauthammer, a syndicated columnist, Fox News contributor, and author of Things That Matter, which has sold more than 1 million copies. Charles, good to see you. That would not conform with my appropriate role as president, and the notion that I can do it is just not the case. What a difference a few years make, because he has now done a complete 180.
And I think his own words will sort of indict himself. It is very clear that what he's doing now, as he has said many times in the past, is a flagrant assault on the Constitution, on the separation of powers. Congress makes the laws. The laws call for certain things. And if you suspend it unilaterally, that is an assault on the constitutional system. Now, I'm sure Obama will be able to find, particularly his Attorney General Holder, will be able to find a bunch of lawyers who will say it's okay. I mean, as we know, if you're a district attorney, you can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich, and this is the equivalent. You'll always be able to find a government lawyer who say anything that you do is legal. But this is clearly illegal. I think in time the courts will invalidate it, but of course that will be way down the road. I do think it's important, though, for Republicans to vigorously oppose this but not lose their heads. Do not shut down the government over this. We've tried that. We Republicans have tried it 20 years ago. We tried it a couple of years ago. It is always a losing proposition. And I think that apart from the policy, one of the reasons the president is doing this is a way to make himself relevant, the center of attention again, after the shellacking he took in the election and the loss of the Senate.
Before we talk about what the Republicans are likely to do and what, in your view, they should do, I want to stick with the potential lawlessness of this action. There's no question a president has prosecutorial discretion. He can push for certain enforcement policies, but it's a sliding scale. And just as, you know, a prosecutor looking at murderers who are brought before him for potential charges can say, I'm going to go after life without parole on this one, and I'm going to go after the bare minimum on this one. If that prosecutor were to say, I'm not going to prosecute any of the murderers who come before me, he would be thrown out of office. This president is pushing it and pushing it and pushing it on the sliding scale. If we're talking 5 million illegal immigrants, we are in unprecedented territory. Don't let anybody tell you that a president has done that before. They haven't. When Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to 3 million, he did it with the Congress. We're in new and uncharted waters here, and that's why some say the Republicans have no choice but to call out that perceived lawlessness and do something as politically unpopular as impeach him.
Look, I believe it is an impeachable offense. If the circumstances were different, if we were at the beginning of a presidency, if we hadn't had years when the Congress has been supine and unresponsive at other grabs of their authority by the executive, like Obama unilaterally changing Obamacare after it was passed about 30 times with no response from the Congress, the same as Obama essentially rewriting some of the drug laws. This idea of prosecutorial discretion is really a travesty. It is intended for extreme cases, for a case where you want to show mercy for an individual or two, where it's unusual incident, unusual circumstances, and you say, okay, we're going to give this person a pass. It was never intended to abolish a whole class of people subject to a law and to essentially abolish whole sections of a law. And that's exactly what's happening here.
What they keep saying, it is sort of this plaintiff complaint that we really want this. It's time. The Republicans didn't do it. We tried to get it passed in Congress, and we couldn't. And therefore, the president must act, which, as I have to tell you, somebody who practiced law for 10 years, it makes my brain freeze up. That's not the way the system is designed.
Well, that's the way the system is in Venezuela. If the caudillo isn't able to get stuff done through Congress, he issues a decree, and that's it. And he'll arrest anybody who gets in the way. The whole American system is designed that there has to be a collaboration between the Congress and the president. Congress has to pass it. He has to sign it. That's the way the damn thing works. You can't say, I waited and waited. And incidentally, the cynicism of Obama saying, I waited and waited, he was in control of the Congress. The Democrats had majorities for 2 years, in 09 and 10. He could have proposed and passed any immigration reform he wanted. He didn't propose it. He waited. And now he says, I waited for Republicans. Where were you when you had control of the Congress? And you can't just say, I waited. You have to work with the Republicans, and you cannot simply issue decrees. We don't rule by decree in this country. I mean, Obama says he's a constitutional scholar. And the interesting part, as you showed earlier, is he knows that he shouldn't be doing this. But I think he's reached a point in his presidency, he's not ever going to be on the ballot again, even indirectly. And he doesn't care.
He doesn't care.
He's
But what would
it.
happen, Charles, in this country if we had a Republican president who said, you know what, I'm going to use my prosecutorial discretion to just not go after those who harass women who are going into abortion clinics? I realize there are laws on the books that say we should go after them, but I just see them as worthy of my mercy. And I tried to push a bill through Congress, but those darn Democrats wouldn't allow it. So with the stroke of my pen, I am now going to say we're just not going to prioritize those prosecutions. I mean, this is a precedent that the left may not want to set.
Well, the example I like to use is, let's say you get a Republican president who says, I've tried to get the abolition of the capital gains tax because it's hurting our economy, but the Congress simply won't cooperate, and I will not wait. So I have issued an executive order that the IRS will no longer collect capital gains taxes or pursue anybody who doesn't pay them. Everybody would say this is obviously a breach of the Constitution, and it would be an impeachable offense. And of course, if it's a Democrat and it's for an issue where the media are rather sympathetic, they let it pass. But I think you're right. The Democrats will rue the day when this kind of invasion of the territory of Congress was allowed to pass. And it isn't only that Democrats are not defending their own institution, as you would have expected in the day of the great Democrats. It's that they are applauding and encouraging this sort of usurpation of their power, and they will regret it, because there's going to be a Republican administration one day, and they will be on the receiving side of precedents that they themselves have set and did nothing about.
It's extremely short-sighted, and they will not always like the person they have in the White House. Charles, thanks for being here.
Pleasure.